Alright, so in this tutorial we're going to cover how to render AVI video in 3D Studio Max for displaying your characters mainly. I'm just going to do it here on a work in progress character I'm working on. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create some pretty rough 3-point lighting. So a backlight, a front light and an ambient light. I'm just going to change the intensity of that ambient light. Okay, so of course you can modify those lights now to suit your needs more specifically until your scene looks right. I'm just going to quickly render that from the perspective viewport to show what that's going to look like. So that's not too bad really. And also we can modify the background color of our render. So we go to environment up there, then we can change this to whatever color we want. I like a light grey personally. We don't have to worry about the other options at this stage. So okay, that next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a camera to render from. This is better than rendering from just a viewport, as cameras have a lot more options and are more flexible. So drag that onto the scene, and you can change the lens size and whatever as well, like so. Okay, and right click that viewport and change it to camera 1, which you've just created. And so now when we modify that camera, whatever you do to it will show up in the perspective, or what was once the perspective viewport there. So you can manipulate that as much as you like until you get the shot that you want of your model. So I'm quite happy with that. I'm just going to render it again just to make sure everything's okay, and that looks fine. Okay. So at this stage I'd animate, usually I'd make it rotate 360. I'm not going to cover that here because that's auto key animation, that's a bit different. So we're going to click render, and we're going to make sure it's rendering from the camera 1. You can see the drop down there. And also here we're going to render not single but active time segment, which is everything along that timeline there. We can also specify frames, so 0 to 50, that would give us those frames there, but of course here we want active time segment. We can also change render every nth frame. This will basically skip out frames when it renders, so if I change that to 2, it'll render every other frame. So instead of 150 frames, it will render 75 frames and double the rendering speed but half the quality. Okay, so here we're going to change the size of our video as well, and also there's a few options there you can play with in your own time. Okay, so if you go down here to the file, render output, click files and change this to an AVI format. That'll render it as an AVI, as a video, which is what we want, and change the file name to whatever you want. I'm happy with this location, so confirm that. And now you'll be presented with another box. There we are, with compressor, frame rate and quality, so that's quite self-explanatory really, but I'm not going to change any of that at this stage. So okay that, and now you'll see it's confirmed that, save file, and you've got your file location. So now we're ready to render. So click there, and unlike before, you'll see rather than just rendering one frame, it's rendering all the frames, or every other frame, seeing as I specified every second frame. So you just let that run through its rendering process. If you've got hair or cloth modifiers, it's going to slow this down quite significantly, so you might want a cup of tea in that case. So when that's done, like that, you can go to your location where you saved it, and here you will now have your rendered animation.